welcome again to the channel. Today we're back on GT Sport and we're back with a track guide at Le Mans. Obviously Le Mans recently got added into GT Sport, so I wanted to get a track guide done, and I've decided to do this track guide in the Group 1 cars. I think it's going to be a car that a lot of people are going to be driving over the next few weeks with Le Mans coming up, so they'll probably want some hints and tips on how to get the best lap time out of this track. For this track guide, we're using the default setup. Obviously this lap was done within the track, the sports mode. Daily racing was on when the track got released, so we're using racing hard tyres, default setup, no tuning. This is as the car is without any changes, so it's got more potential. Obviously with tuning you're going to want a lower downforce on this car because this car is running a little bit too much downforce as default, but for this track guide we're going to keep it completely default, so that if this track is going to probably come up again around the time of Le Mans, so I wanted to get the track guide out just so everyone's fully up to speed with this track. And you really do need to pay attention because this track on GT Sport has probably got the strictest track limits that I've come across on any track in the game. Personally, I feel they've gone a little bit too strict. You know, I think they've took a little bit of the enjoyment out of the track because of how strict they've made the limits. They feel just a tad too strict. You know, even on iRacing, they're nowhere near as strict as this. And iRacing in general does try to keep them reasonably strict, but it tries to keep the racing going here without giving penalties every 5 seconds. Just to give you an idea of when I did the race that was on the daily race, that this lap was obviously from the qualifying from that. I think that I did 2 or 3 races. I couldn't get in a rhythm on this track in the race. I managed to get this reasonably good lap done in qualifying, but I had been doing videos all day as well, so I really didn't really have much time to practice. I'd just been doing videos and then decided to do this hot lap, then tried to do a few races and just couldn't get in the rhythm of the track. But I think the track limits were probably half of that. I mean, at the end of both races I did, not one single person had no penalties. Every single person in every single race I did at the track came away with a penalty, and it does show you. Obviously these cars are very fast and they're going to be the hardest cars to keep it in the limits, but it does show you that I think they might have pushed the limits a bit too far. I know we all want strict track limits. I want strict track limits, but if they're going to be this strict on this track, they need to sort out the Nürburgring. I don't know if that has actually been altered since the last patch. I do need to check that, but definitely this track needs just to be loosened in a bit on some of the corners. You know, running wide by an inch on the rear tyre but keeping most of the tyres fully in the white lines. I think you just got to be a bit more lenient for the racing, really. I think they should really have 2 separate models. For the hot lapping like this, I think that you should have the limits strict. That's fair enough, but I think for racing they need to just open them limits up a lot. You know, I think other games do that in terms of, like, I think Project Cars might even do that on some of its settings. It seems to have separate settings for its like track limits in race and time trial form. However, it's obviously better to be strict than overly, you know, letting you cut all kinds of corners. So we're going to start this track guide. Obviously first thing you want to do is get a nice clean exit from the first corner. So you can see there, starting lap, I've got the camera in the top right hand corner for people that use the pad and the chase camera, just so you can see that perspective as well. Going into turn 1, this is a real tricky braking zone where you're getting your car as far over to that left hand side as possible. Use some of the curb, then try and cut some of that with your right hand tyre, and then pretty much as the car is in a straight line, you're going to start your braking. You can see there, we're going to start braking and then trail brake all the way into corner. Get your car as far over to the right as possible, down into second gear. I missed the apex that corner a little bit, could have took a little bit more off, and now you want to try and just get your right hand tyre where the point of that arrow is, just about there, and then on the power as early as you can. Be so careful in this corner. You can see that I'm just in the track limits on my 2 right hand tyres. Any further than that and you're going to get a lap invalid track penalty, time penalty, so just be careful on that corner. And then all the way now flat out into this next tricky corner where you're going to just briefly downshift it into, you can see just briefly on the brakes very slightly, and you're going to downshift it and aim to hit a very early apex. You want to try and, as if you're going to cut the corner, but you won't because of the way the corner is and you're going so fast. In 4th gear, flat out now at this point, you do not need to lift for this right hander that you're going to see. You want to try and skim the bollards on the right hand side. In 4th gear, flat out, upshift into 5th gear, and now this is another very tricky corner. Just a brief tap on the brakes I just like to just slight touch the brakes there, and it just helps bite the car into this right hand. And you're going to go pretty much flat out in 5th gear, and you really want to aim to get your left hand tyre as close to the white line as possible. Too much and you will get an invalidated lap, but do it perfect like that. That was pretty much perfect and you won't get any sort of penalty. And obviously be careful not to run wide on the left hand side. If you do run wide, you are probably going to pick up a penalty. So bear that in mind when you're trying to get the cleanest exit from that corner. Working your way now down this straight, and you really do need to pick your braking spot. So what I'm going to do is slow it down. First thing you want to do is look out for the 300 board. You're going to see it approach, and then you're going to look for the 200 there. This is important to start looking out for these 200s very early so that you can pick your braking spot, because we're going to brake just before the 100 there. Starting to brake there now, pretty much in between the 200 and 100. Don't brake too late or you'll completely mess up your apex of this next corner, as you really want to get nice and tight in on this apex. Take some of the curb on the right hand tyre, and this allows you to shorten the angle and also widen the entry point into this second part of this chicane. Now you can see there the apex there, we want to hit our left hand tyre on that curb pretty much perfectly like that, and then on the power very early, flat out now, and again get your right hand tyre onto that curb and just shorten the track as much as possible. Just be cautious you don't cut that corner completely, because it will invalidate your lap or give you a penalty, etc. So now working your way down this long straight again, we're going to be looking out again another tricky braking spot that you do need to start looking out for them brake markers very early so that you do not miss your braking spot. It's really important to do, and I always look out for the boards as I'm going down these straights because you're going so fast. So as you can see there, that's the 300 board, which is the first board you're going to come across. Then it's going to be the 200 board, and then we're going to be braking just short of the 100 board, which you'll see approaching right there now. And we're going to start putting a little bit of, this is where you're going to start your braking just short of that board. You want to be like 10 yards short of the board, braking extremely hard down into third gear, and try and get your left hand tyre onto that curb and ride it slightly. Obviously you don't want to be just over the white line because you'll compromise the entry into this next part, so you want to widen the corner as much as possible so that you can attack it as we're attacking now to the right hand point of this corner. You can see they're getting the right hand front tyre as close to the curb as possible. Briefly upshifted, you see the way we upshifted the from third to fourth, a quick upshift. I didn't want to keep it revving in third, because if you keep the revs going really high in third gear there, you risk the rear starting to lose traction. So I did a short shift into fourth, gains a little bit of traction, and then you're working your way all the way up into another very tricky braking zone. This is probably the trickiest on the course to get right, because you're going nearly 200 miles per hour, and you can see there we're braking just after the curb starts on the right hand side, the yellow and blue curb. Then brake in a straight line and get the car over to the left hand side, but again be very cautious. There's this white line that you see there, I've got the arrow on it, because if you brake and go too far on the left hand side, that you're going to get your lap penaltied and you're going to just lose time obviously. And again on the exit, be very careful not to run too far over that curb on the left hand side, because again that will give you a time penalty. So just be really cautious to make sure your right hand tyres are on that curb at least. Now straight out, this is just flat out all the way up this long straight with a few kinks in it, and try and shorten your distance. It's not worth much, but every little fraction of a second counts. And now we come to another tricky braking zone. You're going to look out for that green Astra on the left hand side, and a quick tap of the brakes before we approach this really fast corner, and we just try and bite it into the right hand side and stick to the right hand side. And now we're going to start trail braking all the way into this really fast left hand corner again. So down into third gear, and just as you feel the car bite, back on the power now and accelerate out of this corner and nearly hitting 100 miles per hour as we come out of the corner. Then down into second gear, we're going to brake just about now. I like to brake early for this corner because it's really hard to find the braking reference. So I find if you try and push the braking limits, you do end up braking a little bit wide and you compromise your exit. So I like to brake nice and early down into second gear and try and get your right hand front tyre as close to that curb as possible. And then once the car is in a straight line, put the power down into third gear, and then you're on your way now to the really fast section, another really complicated section that if you get it right it feels really good, but it's so easy to get this next section wrong. And even on this lap I didn't quite hook this section up, you're going to see now. So going into this corner, you're going to look out for the green Astra on the left again, and just after we go past that, you're going to just tap the brakes and get ready to chuck the car into this right hand corner. You can see there we want to hit that right hand tyre as close to this apex as possible. I actually took a little bit too much speed in here now and compromised my entry into this next part. I would have been further over where that arrow is on the right hand side. I would have preferred to be coming in from that tighter and wider angle, and then this means I have to give it a brief lift on this power section. I really wouldn't want to be lifting. You want to get as close as you can to that wall on the right hand side, carrying as much speed through these corners as possible. Nice and tight to the left hand part of this corner now. No need to touch the brakes, and then onto this right hand corner, just down into 5th gear, and just try and hold it as close as you can to that curb on the right hand side, because your next corner is really unsighted and it's so hard to hit the apex that you really just need to kind of guess your turning. You'll see now you just pretty much at this point tap the brakes again and just chuck it into the left hand, and just be careful not to do it too late, because if you do, you just run wide and lose a lot of time. I got that pretty much spot on there on the power nicely, and out the exit pretty much perfect. But that is an unsighted corner that you really do need to learn to get right. Now we're going into the next braking zone just before the end of the lap, just after the pit lane entry, pretty much in the middle of the tarmac for the pit lane entry. Start your braking, and you're going to go down into 4th gear for this corner. You don't want to take too little speed, you want to go quite aggressively into this first chicane, and then start brake, a little tap of the brakes there to try and bite it into this right hand part of the corner, and then you're going to brake again about now, just to get the car over to the right hand side, because we need to be attacking the corner from this right hand side. You don't want to be on the left hand side entering into this chicane, and attack your left hand front tyre onto that curb there, and try and not take too much off, as it will give you a penalty. And again, attack the right hand curb on the right hand side, and just again try and be careful that you don't pick up any penalties. And then on the power in 3rd gear, just be cautious not to put too much power down and understeer wide. And you can see there over the line for a 3 minutes 19.850, which is a reasonable lap. It's not obviously my ultimate lap. I think I could get this into a 3 minutes 18. It's not the fastest car at this track, obviously, with the default setup. If you mess with the setups, I'm guessing this car would be very strong, because you'd lower the downforce quite a bit. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that track guide. What I'm going to do now is leave on screen the chase camera view for anyone to watch, just so you can see what it looks like from this view, obviously if you're playing on the pad and you want to see the lines etc from this view, just to give you a different perspective on that lap. Anyway, thanks again for watching this video. If you did like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. I do appreciate everyone that gives these videos thumbs up, and obviously if you haven't already subscribed, make sure you subscribe and click that notification button so you don't miss any future videos. I do try and upload every single day on GT Sport, so do check out my other videos. Thanks again for watching, everyone.